Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is our next lecture about the course finite fields. In this lecture, we will talk about primitive elements, some facts about primitive elements. Because in the previous lecture, we studied in detail about the existence of primitive elements, and we proved that the group of non-zero elements of finite fields form the cyclic group. And in this lecture, we will continue with the primitive elements, and then we study some basic facts about how to use log and anti-log function in finite fields, and we then we recall some facts from field extensions, degree of field extensions, and then the mainly we will talk about the subfields of the finite fields. So here are the outlines of this lecture. We will talk about primitive elements and logarithm in finite field and some basic facts about field extension, and at the end we will completely describe all the subfields of the finite field. So please, we start our lecture. So, first, we recall again the definition of primitive element. What are the primitive element? A primitive element is simply a generator of the cyclic group. Which cyclic group? Which is formed by the non-zero element of the finite field. In other words, an element x in a finite field fq is a primitive element of fq if fq can be written as 0, 1, x, x square until so on x power q minus 1. That means all the non-zero elements can be written as a power of x, and that element x called will be a generator of this cyclic group of non-zero elements, and it is named as primitive element in this field. Of course, this generator is not unique. That means the primitive element will not be unique. So here are some immediate characterizations and consequences about primitive element and this cyclic groups. So first one is that the group of non-zero elements of fq star, the group of non-zero element of the finite field fq, that is fq star, is isomorphic to this cyclic group zq minus 1. This is because in the group theory we have learned that any two cyclic group of the same order are isomorphic, and therefore every finite cyclic group will be isomorphic to Zn for some n. And here fq star is cyclic, and this is isomorphic to this cyclic group of order q minus 1. This is a basic fact from group theory we apply here, because any two cyclic group of same order are isomorphic. And the second one is some characterization of primitive element, that how we detect that which element is primitive. We take any non-zero element in the finite field, and that element will be primitive element if and only if its order is equals to q minus 1, the order of fq star. And the third one tells us that if we have one primitive element in hand, then all its power will also be primitive if and only if these powers are relatively prime with q minus 1. Again, see, if we have some primitive element x in fq, then x power I is also primitive, but if and only if it is relatively prime with q minus 1. What is q minus 1? The order of fq star. And what is number 4? Fq has total phi of q minus 1 primitive elements, where phi denotes the Euler's phi function. So here we apply the result from cyclic groups. We know that if a finite cyclic group has order n, then it has phi of n number of generators. So fq star is cyclic, so its generator are exactly the primitive elements. To count the primitive elements, we have to count the generators of fq star. So this number will give us the cardinality of all the primitive elements in fq, where phi is Euler's phi function. You know this. And the 5 one is not only about the primitive elements, but it tells us it counts all the elements of each order. That is, for each positive divisor d of q minus 1. What is q minus 1? Q minus 1 is the order of fq star. So for each positive divisor d of order of fq star, there are phi of d elements of order d. For example, if we are in f9, And then we have four divisor of 8, 1, 2, 4, and 8. So there is 1 elements of order 1, 5 of 2 elements of order 2, 5 of 4 elements of order 4, and 5 of 8 elements of order 8. So this is what we have some easy consequences about primitive elements, roots, and cyclic groups whatsoever. And now, what is the advantage of primitive elements? We can write all the elements in the power of some single elements, and then we can talk about the logarithm. When you studied logarithm in reals, in positive real numbers with base 10, you are actually talking about the powers of 10. And when you are talking about the natural logarithm, you are talking about the powers of e, where the base e and base 10 are important, but here the base is primitive element. This logarithm is also known as discrete logarithm because it's defined on a discrete set. So we define this as follows, that log of an element beta is the power in which is the power of alpha in which beta can appear. What is log of beta? Log of beta tells us the power of alpha in which beta appear. So this is the inverse function of the exponential function. So here is the example. Here is the example. From the example, you can understand well about uh, how this function works. For example, we have the field f8. F8 can be described as f2x over 1 plus x plus x cube, and it consists of 8 elements, which can be described in this way. And theta is root of this polynomial, so we write these 8 elements. So now we compute the log and anti-log of each element for each the element. So here you see, here if beta is 0, then log is undefined because no power of theta is 0, is undefined. We cannot talk about. And actually, for talking about the logarithm, we have to fix some primitive element. And here in this field, all the elements, here in this field, all the elements except 0 and 1, all the elements are primitive. Because 5 of 7 equal to 6, it has 6 primitive elements. All the elements are, so we can take a simplest one. So similarly, what is log of 1 is 0 because theta power 0 is 1 and theta power 1 is 1. So log of theta is 1. Theta square, log of theta square is 2. And now what is log of 1 plus theta? We first write 1 plus theta into power of theta, and that power will be the answer of logarithm, because 1 plus theta equals to theta cube. So answer will log of this is 3. 1 plus theta square is equals to theta power 6. You have computed all these powers in some previous lessons, previous slides. Similarly, theta plus theta square equals to theta power 4. So log of this is 4. And similarly, 1 plus theta square is theta power 5. So log of this is theta. And here it is anti-log. It is reverse process. We take the powers and we compute the power of theta and write the answer here. Theta power 0 is 1, theta power 1 is theta, theta square is theta square, theta cube is 1 plus theta, theta. All the answers will be in the field, the given field. We are taking answers from this field. This is given field. So we are writing in this way. So we can apply all the properties of logarithm here. For instance, if we want to compute this product of these two elements, we know that log of x dot y equals to log of x plus log of y. So similarly, if we compute the log of product of these two elements, we get 2 plus 3 is 5. And now what is the anti-log of 5 is this number. So it means the product of these two numbers is this number. Similarly, we can, if we multiply theta square with this element, here the sum is 6 and 6 correspond to this number. So in this way, we can use this information. These informations, there are many other techniques like this and many tables, but these informations are helpful when you are working to making some code in some computer language to calculate some bigger things in finite fields. If you know the background and logic for these things, so these will be very helpful in the coding process when you make some code in the computer language. So these type of techniques are important to learn. I don't mention all the techniques, but here are some glimpse of these things, these informations. You can find many such techniques in the books. Anyhow, this is just an information about logarithm and anti-logarithm, that how they can be helpful. And now we comes towards the structure of finite field. These are basic definitions and about the field extension, degree of field extension, and then we will use these facts in our main theorem, which is about the subfields of the finite fields. Here is a definition that if F1 contained in F2 is any extension of fields, then the multiplication defined in F2 make F2 into vector space over the field F1. In particular, every field F can be considered as a vector space over its prime field, subfield. Again, see, if we have a field extension F1 contained in F2, then bigger field is always a vector space over the smaller field. And in vector space, you should recall the definition of vector space from the lower classes. Vector space is an additive abelian group, and there is some scalar multiplication from the field, and it satisfies certain axioms. So here we take F2 as a field as a group under addition, and scalar multiplication is taken as this simple multiplication in F2. The usual multiplication of F2 is taken as the scalar multiplication. Simply the message is that whenever we have a field extension, the bigger field becomes a vector space over the smaller field, obviously. So we can talk about the dimension of this vector space. So dimension of this vector space is termed as the degree of this field extension. If we have some field extension, then we consider F2 as a vector space over the field F1, and the degree of this field extension is the dimension of F2 as a vector space over the field F1. What is the degree of field extension? It is denoted by this symbol. This symbol means degree of this field extension. And what is mean by the degree of field extension? Degree is nothing, just the dimension of F2 taken over the field F1. F2 is a vector space over the field F1, and the dimension of this vector space is the degree of the field extension. And what is dimension? You know the cardinality of basis of that vector space. And here is a simple definition that we say that a field extension is finite if the degree of the field extension is finite. What is the degree of field extension? Is actually the dimension of the vector space F2 taken over the field F1. In some cases, we have infinite field extension because the dimension is infinite. In some cases, we have finite field extension. To understand well the definition, let us see some example. We know that R is a subfield of C. C can be taken as a vector space over the field R, and here 1 and iota is the basis because every element of C can be written as a linear combination of 1 and iota, and these two elements are linearly independent. They are well-known facts. So this field extension has degree 2. Similarly, this is also a field extension. Q is a subfield of C, but here the degree of field extension is infinite. There are many other examples for infinite degree of field extension, but we focus on only this. Similarly, if we take this field, this consists of elements which are linear combination of 1 and this. So it has 2 elements in basis. So this has degree 2. Similarly, this field, which consists of elements which are linear combination of these elements, and this can be proved linearly independent. So this field has degree 3 over the field Q. And now here is a very useful theorem. It will make some it will makes the life easy for us when we are talking about the degree of field extension in finite fields. This theorem states that, see, let f be an irreducible polynomial of degree n over a field f. We have an irreducible polynomial. And the second thing, theta be the root of f in some extension field of f. We have two things, an irreducible polynomial of degree n over a field f and a root of f in some extension field of f. Then when we extend the theta, when we extend f in this theta, and this field contains the field f, so we have a field extension, then what is the degree of this field extension is exactly equal to the degree of this polynomial. And these elements 1 theta, theta square unto theta n minus 1 will be served as the basis for this as a vector space over f. So when we extend f in some element theta, which is a root of some irreducible polynomial, so it consists of elements which are linear combination of this form. Every element of f theta can be written in this way. So here are linear combination of these n elements, and they are linearly independent. You can prove that they are linearly independent. And so the basis has n elements, so it means the degree is n. Well, how it can be helpful if you are working in a finite field. For instance, if we have fpn, we know that fpn has characteristic p. Fp is its subfield, and the degree is n, because when we how to construct fpn is basically fp theta, where theta is degree of theta is root of polynomial, irreducible polynomial of degree n over the field fp. So in this way, by using this result, the extension of this field is n. The degree of this field extension is n. For example, if I say what is the degree field, if we take f2 is contained in f16, what is the degree of field extension is 4, because the irreducible polynomial used has degree 4. And say, so this is a general result. We can immediately obtain the fpn over fp has degree equals to n. For instance, f27 over f3 has degree 3. We prove this corollary by using this result, that when we construct fp power n is actually fp theta, which is obtained by modding out fpx with this irreducible polynomial. And this polynomial has degree n, so by this theorem, this field extension has degree n. So this information will be very helpful. So now it's very important Tower law and field extension. This Tower law tells us that if we have three fields, f1 is contained in f2 and f2 is contained in f3, and we have two field extensions, and if these both field extensions are finite, finite means if their degrees are finite, then if we contained f3, f1 in f3, then this field extension has also finite degree, and this degree is obtained by multiplying the degree of these two extensions. For instance, from the diagram, you can see we have three fields. We have a tower of three fields, f1, f2, and f3. If f1 is contained in f2, f2 is contained in f3, and this is finite, so this complete extension will also be finite, and the degree of this complete extension will be obtained by multiplying the degree of these f1, f2, and f2, f3. And this tower law can be extended for finitely many fields. This is not only for three. You can take similarly, you can extend this tower for any finite number of fields. So it says that when we combine the finite field extensions, you get another finite extension, and the degree of that extension is product of the degree of all the extensions. This is called the Tower law. It's well known, famous. And now here is a subfield criterion. This theorem is the last theorem in this lecture. After this, there will be some example, and then we close. But this theorem is important because it gives us all the information about the subfield of a finite field. This theorem, the message of this theorem is that if we have a finite field fq, of course q will be some power of a prime p. Then if we take any subfield of this field, that field will be isomorphic to fp power m, where what is m? M will be the divisor of this n. What is special about m? M will be the divisor of n. So this theorem is talking about the divisors and subfield. We know that any subfield has very finite field has order prime power, is well known, but important here is that this m will be divisor of this n which appears in the given field of order p power n. That any subfield, we have a field of order p power n. If we take any subfield, then this field has order also in prime power, but that power will be divisor of the power of in the given field. And also, if we take any divisor of this power of given field, we get this unique subfield, exactly one subfield of uh, order equal to fpm. So this theorem in some sense gives a one-to-one correspondence between the divisors of n and the subfields of fp power n. We have a given field fp power n. If we know all the divisors of n, we can find all the subfields of this field, say fp power n. There is a one-to-one correspondence. In the second part, see, if we have fp power n, by knowing the divisor, for each divisor we have a unique subfield which is given by fp power m, where m is divisor of n. So from the each divisor we have a unique subfield, and part 1 tells us that these are the only subfields which are obtained by divisor, nothing except the divisors. So this theorem gives a message that all the subfields are actually fp. If fp power n is a field, it's every subfield are obtained by just the powers of which are the divisors of n. So this is the message of this theorem. And now here is a proof. It is important to know the proof of this theorem, because knowing proof, your thinking and understanding about the subject will be more improved. You will, if we just remember the statements, then it will be forget after some time. But if you know the reason that why it is true, it's very good for your logical understanding, and your it will improve and explore your understanding about the subject. And the proofs are very important in the sense there are many hidden steps that are very interesting, and they will improve your understanding. So it's important to know that why it is true. If we claim something in theorem, then we have to prove that why this claim is true. So now suppose that f is a subfield of fp power n, the part 1, and we will show that this field f is isomorphic to fp power m, where m is a divisor of positive divisor of n. So we start the proof. We take f is a subfield of fp power n. Yes. Then what we get about f, because f has also order p power m from prime power, because we know that every finite field has order p power n, and any two finite field of same order are isomorphic by uniqueness theorem. So if f is a subfield, it is also a finite field, so its order will be p power m for some m. We don't know about m for the moment, but in this part 1 we have to prove that this is important, that this m is a divisor of n. So this we will prove in the following way. We have this tower of fields now. Fp is contained in this. Fp is a base field, is a prime subfield in this one, and this contained in this one, because F is isomorphic to this one. So we have this tower of field, this contained in this and this contained in this. So by tower law, the degree of this field extension multiplied by degree of this field extension is equals to the total degree of the field extension. And we know by a previous theorem, we know, and here we know the degree of this field extension is n. We will apply it here. Here we apply it. We get this as it is, and this is we get m and equals to the total degrees n. So this implies m is a factor of n. So m divides n. So this completes the proof of first part. That if we take any subfield, of course it is fp power m, but that m will be a divisor of n. And that divisibility is proved in this technique by using Tower law and degree of field extension. That's why we need that results to apply here. Again, see, we take this tower of field because this is a subfield of this. Yes, because F is a F is a subfield, and we know F is isomorphic to this field. Yes, and so this is we have a tower of this field extension, with the first taken that field is equals to this up to isomorphism, and so we have tower of this field extension, and then we apply the degree rule. This extension has degree m. This we don't know, but total degree is n. So n equals to, by Tower law, n equals to m times something. So m divides n. So this we proved. If f is a subfield, then f is equals to fp power n, where m is positive divisor of n. And by part second, from each divisor, we get these subfields. So these are the only subfield up to isomorphism. And this proves the first part, that every subfield of fp power n is actually fp power m, where m is the positive divisor of n. So it has order p power m. So where m is the positive divisor, and we have this result that because this is a subfield here, and this we have, suppose that this is f, this is our f, this is a subfield here. So we, in this way we get this fp is contained in every fp power n. So we have this tower, and we get the result. And now, we will prove the second part. In the second part, we have to prove that for each positive divisor f m of n, fpn has a unique subfield fpm. Unique mean exactly one for each divisor. It means, what one says that these are the only subfields. We have exactly one-to-one correspondence between the divisors of n and the subfields of fm, fpm over n. So now we prove the second part. We take some positive divisor. Suppose m divides n. This implies p power m minus 1 divides p power n minus 1. I think you can prove this. If not clear, I will explain you in the online session. It's a simple result from number theory. We can apply here, and also we can prove directly. We can factor out this element, and this implies this polynomial divides this polynomial. Try to see why this is true. Otherwise, I will explain you in the online session that why it is true. And by multiplying both sides by x, we get that this divides this. So it means every root of this polynomial is also a root of this polynomial. And these polynomials are very special polynomials. You know, the roots of these polynomials gives us a field with p power m elements. A root of this polynomial gives us a field with p power n elements. So we conclude that every root of this polynomial is also a root of this polynomial, and hence all the roots of this polynomial taken over fp, all the root is contained in the set of all the root of this polynomial. But what are the roots of this polynomial? This is a splitting field of this polynomial, that is fp power n, and this is also a subfield. This is also a field. We know that there is a way to construct a finite field, that we take all the root of this special polynomial. We have learned this. So this is also a field with p power m elements. So this field is contained in this. So we have find this field of order p power m, which is a subfield of this field. This set is equals to fp power n, and this is a set is a subfield of this field with p power m element. And this is field is unique by uniqueness theorem. So for every divisor, we have this polynomial is a divisor of this polynomial, so we get a unique subfield of order p power m. So this completes the proof. And now let us see the examples. And before example, there is an immediate corollary. There is one-to-one correspondence between the set of all the subfields of fp power n and the set of all positive divisors of n. For instance, this example is taken from the Go book Joseph Kellyan, Contemporary Abstract Algebra. In this, we are given this field f2 power 24. This field can also be described in this way. This is just a matter of notation, no problem. And what are the subfields? The subfield of this, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 subgroups. Sorry, 8 subfields because 24 has 8 divisors. And now the containment relation between these subfields can be shown by using this a lattice diagram. What is a lattice? Lattice is a partially ordered set in which every two elements has a lower bound supremum and every two elements has a supremum infimum. Means we can, if we have a lattice ordered set, we can express that set in a diagram in which these are the elements of set, and this line from if something is contained in the other thing, if some element is contained in the other element, there is a line from that element to other, and the subset will be at lower position and the superset will be at upper position. So this line shows that this field is contained in this field is contained in this field is contained in this. So this line shows the containment relation from lower to top position. from bottom towards top. So it does not say that the upper element is contained in, no, lower element is contained in the upper elements. So this line shows there is a containment relation. For instance, GF2 is contained in GF4 and GF4 is contained in GF2 power 4 is contained in this. So ultimately this also contained in this. And also this is also contained in this, and you see this element is contained in every field. GF2 is basically a prime subfield of this element because it's smallest subfield, you can see from the diagram. And there is no relation between you see GF2 power 8 and GF2 to 12. There is no containment relation, there is no line, there is no path of lines. You cannot see any path. So this relation, containment relation, can be shown by using this lattice diagram. Similarly, there is another example. This I also take from the book, your recommended books. That, for instance, we want to draw all the subfields of f2 power 12. There is one-to-one correspondence between the divisors of 12 and the subfields of f2 power 12. From divisibility, we have also this lattice diagram. 1 divides 2, 2 divides 4, 4 divides 12, and 3 divides 6, 6 divides 12. So, and there is a mistake. There is a line from 2 to 6. There is a mistake. You have to correct this because 2 is a divisor of 6. There should be a line from 2 to 6. And as we have here, this is a missing line. You have to draw this line. I will correct this. So this line here in the upper diagram, the line shows the divisibility relation from lower elements to upper element, and in here we have a subfield relation, containment relation from lower element to upper element. So this is what we have. And now another example, this I take a book from Liddell, and these are the subfields of F230, and this is there are the subfields of F2 power 30, and this lattice diagram show the containment relation. So this is what we learned in this lecture, that subfield of finite fields can be found, and they can be plotted in some lattice diagram with the help of these edges. These edges from from lower position to upper position shows that there is a containment relation. So this is what we have. And here be careful, this is F23 is not contained in this. This is like a 3D shape. It's like there is a cross here in the line. There is no line from this to this. There is a line from this to this to this, and that's all. And these are some references that I have used, and thank you very much for your patience, and Allah Hafiz.